The greatest power you possess is your ability to choose. Join Lowe's Moore as he reveals how you can begin to maximize that power by exploring yourself on the deepest levels and committing to making lasting and positive changes. Get ready to achieve breakthroughs that will lead to accelerated growth and transformation, because you are now tuned in to The Blueprint.
Why they actions contradict the lamb. I'm fellowshipping when I'm with the fam. That's more relations, that's foreign and foreign.
Good evening and welcome back to the Blueprint Podcast. Man, I'm excited for another week on the Blueprint. I want to jump right into it. This is my pebble, even though it's a little basketball. This is my pebble in the pond, and each week I drop that pebble into the pond because each week I think there's going to be a ripple effect. Now, the impact could be immediately, because there are some people who are watching this right now, right? And then there's some people going to watch it later. Remember, it stays on Lowe's More the Blueprint on Facebook, and it stays on Lowe's More the Blueprint on YouTube. And if you don't mind, man, if you enjoy the show, let me first say thank you guys for your support each and every week, man. It was awesome. Last week was amazing with Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas was on last week, man. The great Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas was on last week. Awesome, man. It was an awesome time. And, you know, we're back this week as we taper down again. You know, as I said last week, you know, September, 27 is the end of summer. So we're still in summer. So, you know, we used to end in August. As soon as we in August, we thought summer was over. No, summer's over when it's officially over. And so sometimes what happened, man, if you think it's over in August, all of a sudden the weather will just start to change. But if you still think you're in summer, right, man, it'll stay nice, right? So so it's still summer, and at least I'm in summer mode. I haven't transitioned to fall yet, but again, I want to welcome you guys back, man. This is going to be an awesome night. And let me say, I want to bring up, because one of my past logos, right? For the Blueprint, one of my first logos. This is the newer version of the logo, but it had, Lowe's More. I think I got it on my shirt. It looked like that. Yeah, the logo. And on it, it talks about lifestyle, 7 spheres of influence, right? And it talks about religion, relationship, family, education, government and law, media, business and finances, sports and entertainment, right? 7 spheres of influence. And, my show is wrapped around my guests come from those spheres of influence. I mean, they're in some form or fashion, they're either in that gifting, in that purpose, in that assignment. And it could be multiple assignments. Like you could be in faith, but then be in media, right? You can be in faith, or you can be in education and still be in business. Right. So yeah, we're trying to impact this, whatever the sphere of influence you're in, we're trying to impact it in a positive way, right? We're trying to influence, by being positive and not negative. So I just want to, because our guest today, he's going to be in a sphere of influence in regard to sports, arts, and entertainment, particularly entertainment, the arts and entertainment field, and, looking to have an impact in there. With the gifting that God has given him. So, but also, I wanted to make you aware that this is September is Suicide Prevention Month. So we're going to be focused in that area right now. And even before the pandemic, each and every day, particularly in America, all over the world, people dealing with traumatic or trauma in their lives or in their environment, all over the world. And and so sometimes we don't know in regards to, and I was having conversations all week long around, you can look, I'm a little bit older, so you can look back in the past, right? And how people handle conflict, in the past, how people handle trauma in the past is different than we handle trauma presently, and I like it because, people are speaking out. And I don't know if you guys knew that I'm on the vice president for NCADD, the National Council of Drug and Alcohol Dependency. I'm on the board for that. And how I got involved with it was as the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club. We partnered with NCADD with our youth programs at every level, from elementary school, middle school, high school. And the project was, how do we get young people to talk about trauma? How do we get young people to talk about how they feel? And it was very successful, program, because the people who did it were so gifted in how they built relationships with the kids at the club and how they communicated with the kids at the club, that allowed for them to be comfortable, and it allowed for them to give their trust. And when a person gives you their trust, they're willing to express how they feel. And it was still a very powerful programs that are being run at the Boys and Girls Club, being run in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools, is to get young people, or to get people to express how they feel. Right. And, and trauma can go all the way back to childhood. Right. And I'll say this last thing on this. It's not the last thing, but I want to say this last thing and move on. In my book, which you see right behind me, right? And in my book, not my book, but my wife's book, as you see behind me also, right? My wife has a new book out called So What, right? And she's expressing to people about, a lot of traumatic and trauma and a lot of tough times that she had and I had in regards to several years of our lifetime. And, how the book expresses how she was able to manage that and how she was able to get help from God to be able to manage those things. In my book, I was addressing it, particularly in the beginning, things that happened when I was a young kid, right? And expressing how I felt about those things. And when I wrote my book, it was the craziest thing. I didn't really want to write the book, but my friend kept pushing me. Man, you ought to do your book. I just felt like my life was not that meaningful that I needed to write a book. But I believe all of our lives are meaningful. All the things that we go through and experience and overcome could be in a book, and it could be helpful to somebody, right? When you write your story, right? When you tell people about how you managed or dealt with this, whatever particular situation you had, right? I didn't even know. Here I am, a grown man. I mean, I'm a grown man. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm an executive director. Former NBA player. And man, when I started to write the book, particularly the book on the chapter on family, right? I just broke down and started crying. I had unresolved, right, trauma all the way from when I was a little kid. And there are many of us who are still currently today that are dealing with unresolved trauma in our lives, So this month and this awareness around, suicide prevention, anxiety, depression, whatever, and it has been magnified with the pandemic, and coming out the pandemic and now making adjustments back to hopefully what we consider is a normal lifestyle. So without further ado, let me just jump right into this and let me give you my book of the week. Yeah. If you're from Mount Vernon, you would know this person, but it's Real Talk. Black Pain. It looks like we're not hurting by Terry Williams, and she's a good friend of ours. Terry's amazing, publicist, and she had her own company, right? And she was dealing with a lot of pain in regards to depression. Take a listen at this video that Terry did a few years ago around this particular book and Black Pain.
I think 3 of the hardest words to respond to honestly in the English language are, how are you? We lie. I wrote this book because I really wanted to sound an alarm. So many people are in deep emotional pain. For many of us, the pain has become normalized. I think that we don't know what our pain looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like. I think far too many of us think that we're the only ones and we can't dare show a kink in the armor. Meanwhile, everybody that we know, everybody on the planet has holes in them, and you never know how many holes there are in the person next to you. I know that depression is universal. Black people in this country have a whole other set of circumstances that impact on our pain. We either internalize it and we have major illnesses, hypertension, heart disease, cancer, or it comes out. We'll self-medicate with drugs, alcohol, food, and sex, gambling, working 24/7, and the hurting and the killing each other. 3 years ago, I experienced what was probably the darkest bout of depression I ever experienced. Literally broke down for almost 9 months. And sometimes I would end up at a business meeting and would literally marvel at how I was able to wear that mask. That just 2 hours ago, I was on the floor in tears. It was not just the pain that I was feeling, it was the stress of pretending that I was fine. I think for so many, we just don't know how to start the conversation. So Black Pain, it just looks like we're not hurting, is my expression of faith in the Black community. Let's start the conversation. Then you find out that you're not standing on that ledge by yourself. The ledge, it's concrete, but it's cracking every day because there's so many of us standing on it.
Wow. So make sure you pick up a copy. It's still available. Terry Williams and her mom was so amazing. Dealing with having the courage to step out and deal with this particular issue that's impacting so much of the world and so much of particularly of the Black community. So at this time, let me jump right over into my word of the week, which is prevention. Right. I think it's a very powerful word. I love it because, before something actually happens, man, we can intervene. We can make sure it doesn't happen. Right. We can make sure, people get help. I love the Boys and Girls Club particularly it helped me, the Boys and Girls Club and everybody in it, including that's what our parents do for us. Right. Is that they guide us and tell us good things and try to tell us what's right and what's wrong to prevent us from falling into some of the potholes that maybe they have fell in, and so we're giving good advice on what's right, what's wrong. Don't do that. Don't do this. And when sometimes we get mad at our parents and sometimes we get mad at our mentors and sometimes we get mad at our teachers. Right. But the prevention is that all they're just trying to do is prevent you from anxiety and depression and all other things that go with this thing. So, that's a very powerful word. And then my affirmation for this week. Yeah. You possess the power to change your thoughts. it is the greatest power, the power to choose, right? I mean, it's our choice, right? We get the power to choose what road we're going to go and what road we're not going to go, what we're going to listen to, what we're going to watch, what we're going to see, right? We have the power of choice. And that's my Pierce Harper affirmation quote moment of the week. And then here's my my music and movie of the week. Are You Okay? Which we'll talk a little bit about later, right? We'll talk about that music, that song later. And then I just happened to be looking at, while watching the grandkids, had all 3 grandkids this week at one time, one day. And I just ran into this movie called Butter, right? And one of the things that stopped me was that Michael T. Williams, Michael T. was on there. And I was like, wow, you know, anything that he's in, I want to see. Right. And it was that guy, you said, kind of heavy set guy, white guy up there. His name was Butter. Right. Because he played the saxophone and it was like Butter. But, you know, Butter was having a problem and he was heavy. And he somehow on the computer, he set up his last meal. Everybody convinced him to set up his last meal before he committed suicide. Right. And it talks about that whole process. Right. Like he didn't feel like he wanted to live. Very powerful movie. If you get a chance to check it out, please do. Right. Because so many young people, so many people have gone through this, and so many people are going through this by being bullied and teased and all those kind of things like that, and making people feel inferior. Right. So check that movie out. It's a very powerful tool. And then here's my person of the week. Mount Vernon's own Dougie Fresh, right? A few years ago, JB Smoove was inducted into the National Boys and Girls Club Hall of Fame in New Orleans. It was crazy. I was there with my book. My book was on display and talking about my book. And Dougie Fresh was the actual entertainment for the National Boys and Girls Club. And JB Smoove, right? JB Smoove was inducted into the National Boys and Girls Club Hall of Fame. It was a Mount Vernon conference, right? We were all represented well there. And Dougie Fresh is my person of the week. And I want to say thank you, Dougie, because when I was at the Boys and Girls Club and doing fundraisers, he used to come to our basketball fundraiser. He used to come to our comedy show, and then he entertained right after the comedy show. So thank you, Dougie, for your support over the years, man. Keep up your great work. And then we're remembering, right? When you look at, I looked at some of these people, man, I'm remembering, Dorothy Dandridge, Michael K. Williams, and Whitney Houston, man. And, all of them had their own situations around either addiction or depression, but we were remembering them because, man, they had wonderful gifts, right? And I always believe, man, their life came to a stop just too soon. But we were remembering that great talent, the gifts that God had given them, right? And we're just remembering them today. So, and then I want to say happy Grandparent Day. Oh, well, that's me. Look at all them. Woo! Happy Grandparent Day to all the grandparents out there who are doing their duties. I mean, we were all together last week, Labor Day, and these are just a few of the grandkids, right? And we got a bunch more, but love them all. And man, I don't know about you guys out there, but it's great being a grandparent. I just tell you, it's just an amazing experience. Let me say this before we just move on. We got to move on, but let me say this. After I've seen my kids, grow up, become successful, doing their thing, right? And sometimes I think there's a space where you're like, I've kind of done my job. I mean, it's good, man. I'm proud of them, man. They're amazing. Me and my wife, man, we're just proud and excited. And then we start thinking like, okay, well, what's next? Right? And we don't know what's next. And all of a sudden a grandkid shows up and life is exciting again. I mean, it's crazy again, right? It's just nothing like it, right? When you have your kids have kids and you got grandkids. Oh man, it's a very special place to be, right? You know, it's almost like Sweet 16, a young man turning 13, graduating from high school, graduating from college. Man, that's the kind of excitement it is, right? So happy Grandparents' Day to every single grandparent, right? Enjoy it, right? I want something. Man, I'm telling my kids, I'm on the show, man, I want something from Carvel's. I want peanut butter and chocolate inside with the cookies, swirl all around for Grandparents' Day, man. All right. Y'all hear me? Okay. All right. So let's jump right into this. I want to show you this video. My guest tonight wrote this amazing song, right? And along with him and his partner and friends, they produced the video. So here it is, right? Check this out, and then we're going to get into this conversation about it.
Hello? What's up, man? Bad news. What do you mean he's gone? Oh, God. You could burn it in the sun, instead you lock it all away. And I could say I understand, but it sounds cliche. And I can barely see the stars, all the fog appears gray. Feels like every day is winter, even though I know it's May. I can't hide behind a smile, now the scars are on my face. No, I ain't the only one, so when I see you, I'ma say, are you okay? I know things don't last forever, and our time's ticking away. Are you okay? I can see the tears inside you, but you hide them every day. Are you okay?
What is it?
It's nothing.
It doesn't look like nothing.
It's fine. Mom, it's nothing.
Olivia, who is this?
Nobody. Okay. I hate it here. I hate that we moved here. I get bullied every day at school, just like that. And I hate being isolated in my room because of this stupid pandemic.
Honey, it's hard for everybody, but you're gonna meet new friends, I promise. Oh, I hate that you feel that way. It's gonna be okay.
Sure. You don't live in my life.
I know you might not like this, but I'm gonna have a conversation with your principal today about this, okay?
Bye. You're not the one living in it.
Listen, this is not okay. So I'm gonna have a conversation with your principal at school today, okay? It's gonna be fine. I promise things will get better and it's gonna be okay.
Okay.
All right, grab your bag. Let's go get in the car line.
See the tears inside you, but you hide them every day. Are you okay? It's a never-ending stairway, and I must have lost my wings. I ain't coming home today. I can barely see the stars, all the fog up here is gray. Feels like every day is winter, even though I know it's May. I can't hide behind a smile no more, the scars are on my face. No, I ain't the only one, so when I see you, I'ma say, are you okay? And I know nothing lasts forever, and our time's ticking away. Are you okay? fears inside you, but you hide them every day. Are you okay? I know things don't last forever.
So I want to welcome to the Blueprint, Linx Kanek and David Belton. Link, man, great to see you guys, man.
You too.
Yeah, man. David had I appreciated that David had shared with me a little while ago, and then reminded me of your song. We had several discussions about it, man. Man, give me your thoughts, man, on such a powerful, such a powerful piece, man.
Yeah, like I told Dave, I'm sure Dave kind of basically knows the story of how and why I wrote that record. Was definitely going through a pretty tough time in my life. Yeah, when I recorded that record, my sister's fiance had just passed away. He took his own life, and that kind of, along with a lot of other things that were going on, kind of led me down the road of writing the record. I think the real question I was asking was, am I okay? Because my best friend, it took, he had passed away the year before that, and then that scenario went down, and then little did I know, my father would pass away a year and a half after that. So I think for myself, like I'm saying, I was just kind of asking myself, like, are you okay? Like actually going through these situations. Um, I was dead broke when I wrote the record as well. I lost pretty much everything, my car, my house, just kind of everything. So I wrote that record in a definite time of desperation. So
Yeah, and was it helpful?
absolutely, absolutely helpful because we got to have outlets into which we express our pain. If we don't have those outlets, like you said earlier, I believe people end up internalizing it and doing something that they shouldn't do, or putting themselves in a position to where they do something that they regret, or their family regrets not asking them that question, are you okay? Having a number of my friends, two of my friends have taken their own life. One of my friends passed away in a car accident. He's my best friend. So I mean, you just got to kind of. I think what ends up happening when you lose people in that way is you ask yourself, like, what could I have done to possibly prevent this particular situation from happening? And if we can kind of take preventative measures by asking our friends and family, are they okay, ahead of time, I believe we can kind of circumvent those problems.
Yeah, and I'm sure you shared the song with a number of people. What has been their response?
So a very powerful response that we've received from the people we've reached out to say, hey, this is a record in which we want to help individuals in their time of need, even adding a 1-800 line to it as far as suicide prevention lines, and just people who overall need help, because that's kind of what me and Dave came together on this record to do, is like, hey, this is the kind of record that can change people's lives, and we want to do that. We want to not experience the same, senseless death and suicide. I was looking at the numbers not too long ago, and it just seems as though, it's getting, pretty crazy. You got 132 people dying per day, to suicide. And when you kind of forecast that against, or AB that against, like, car accidents, for instance, you got 118 car accidents that happen per day. So it's definitely something that's a problem, a huge issue. And like I said, me and Dave just wanted to come together and do something about it, because it's definitely impacted us. And I know it's impacted a lot of people at 132 per day. It's ridiculous. So
Yeah. And talk about, let's dive a little bit into, you know, Linx, uh, what it is that you do,
yeah.
right? Talk a little bit about that and how how you started. It looks like you're gifted in this music. Uh,
Oh
you know,
yeah. No, I appreciate that. I'm a little bit, but
you said
I
a little. Did you say a little bit?
a little bit, a little bit. I've learned, I was born and raised in Alabama, and it's I wouldn't say it's a small town. I wouldn't say Huntsville's a small town, but it's definitely a smaller town than, you know, being in New York or something like that. And what I realized there was you know, I was good there, but then when you go to some place like Atlanta, it's like, oh, okay, got a lot of competition. So that's kind of the thing for me. It's like, oh, you gotta have that humble piece. But yeah, I got picked up out of Huntsville. I ran into an A&R from up front. His name was Nick Delton, and he said, hey, if you're good, send me some stuff. So I sent him some stuff. Next thing you know, I'm taking meetings with Akon, Bryant Reed, Emmanuel Seal, and Jermaine Dupri. And ended up signing to Akon. Then later on, I was signed to Jagged Edge, and while I was signed to Jagged, I ended up developing an artist named Yellow Wolf, and we did a deal with Sony. Then later on, we signed Yellow Wolf to Eminem. So yeah, and that was, oh goodness, I'm about to age on you guys.
Well, you can't out age us, so
Yeah, that was in 2008. So that's when Yellow was signed to Sony. So my first deal was in 2005. So yeah, I have lengthy history in the music business, but I've never done a record quite like this. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I have one. Well, I might have two. I think I have two. I think I have two gospel records under my belt. So didn't really do a lot of music that inspired people to do the right thing. I just say that. So this record is something I feel like, okay, well, this is something that inspires people to do the right thing. My father was a pastor. Can't forget about that. I'm a PK. So a lot of times us as pastors' children, we kind of stray away from, the word and basic instructions before leaving the earth. So
I like that. Basic instructions before leaving Earth. Okay.
This is my chance to kind of say, hey, look, coming back to that, and we're gonna try to help some people. So
Yeah. So that means your father's a pastor, and your mother's the first lady, and you.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man.
That. Yeah, and interestingly enough, yes, and it kind of, me and Dave have had multiple conversations. It kind of showed me a lot of things that people go through because, as a pastor, pastors are, and especially in our community, the Black community, it's usually the first place you go when you've got a negative situation. You usually go to the pastor and say, hey, I've got X, Y, and Z going on. Can I get some help? Or, just talk to me about it. Pastors end up being counselors, investors, providers of accommodations, shelter. I mean, pastors kind of, they do it all. They end up doing it all, especially good ones. And my dad definitely was a great pastor and teacher, and he just wanted to help people because he came from a place that didn't have a lot of help. He was born and raised in Pine Bluff, Arkansas,
Mm.
and he didn't have anything out there. I mean, nothing. He finally, built up to a place where he could provide for his family, and he just wanted to give back to the community. So, yeah, for me, it's just this is my chance to kind of do the same and
Right.
keep that legacy because he passed away in 2019. My mother passed away in 2012, and this is
Mm.
like, hey, this is a kind of was an ode to them as well, and to anybody who's lost somebody who's very close to them.
Yeah, but I mean, you heard me talk about earlier in regards to the blueprint being, something that, deals with the spheres of influence,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And you know, looking at the entertainment field, I mean, you have a gift. I mean, right now, listening to, the song, you haven't dove fully into that part of it, but the writing, the producing, a lot of people only see the out front singing part. They don't see the people who kind of develop the stuff behind the scenes. But just like I or anybody in this sports and entertainment field, right, there's a lot of tests, a lot of trials. So talk about some of that experience in that world, right? Because when you started talking about, the people that you've been associated with,
Yeah.
right? Talk a little bit about what that world is like, because some people don't know what that world is like, right? They just see person doing music, producing music or writing music. They don't know the world. Like, many people just see us running up and down the basketball court and we think everything is just good. Oh, he's lucky, but they don't know the world in which you live in and the test and trial that are part of it. So talk a little bit about that.
Man, that's it's an entire conversation. You know what it is? I think when people have too much freedom and they're not disciplined, it's too many things that can go wrong. And what I learned very early on in the music industry is that there are so many temptations that come with the freedom of, i.e., having money, or the temptation of this label is going to give you X amount of dollars, and you've already done the work, so it's not like you really got to do a lot of work. The traps of being robbed. It's just so much. And, Atlanta at one point was just definitely a music mecca of the U.S., and that was around the time I began my career. So yeah, I mean, I'm what I was at the time. I was like 19, and get all these women, because they want to be a part of, or touch the money in some way. A lot of drugs, a lot of different substances. It's just kind of part of the culture, and you got to kind of weave your way through it. I thank God that I did have the background that I had, and I wasn't interested in taking any drugs or even drink. I really wasn't even a drinker at all. So I thank God that I was kind of protected in that way from a mental standpoint, because when you're dealing with someone who is, maybe they're in charge of your career, or they're a major influence in the music industry, you feel some of that pressure to kind of do the same things that they do. If they drink, hey, I'll grab a drink too. Or if they're doing whatever they're into, you have that kind of pressure to do it as well, so that you can have you can come up. Because if they like you, it's sales, right? If they like you, then you can you
That's
come
right.
up. And you just you really gotta be grounded. I mean, this isn't everything, of course, but I'd say the most in the entertainment world, which is just full of I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it's full of temptation mainly. So you
Right.
just got to be really grounded in who you are and know who you are, to kind of be in this business. And like I said, I was in a position to where I knew who I was, I knew what I'd want to do, knew what I didn't want to do. I knew I wanted to learn. I was young. I wanted to learn from as many writers and producers and musicians as I could. I was lucky enough to study under one of the greatest writers of our time, Abel Seal Jr. And I just learned and kept it moving.
Yeah. Awesome. And uh, so David.
You keep going with
Uh,
Linx. You can keep going with Linx. He's
no,
the,
no,
he
I mean,
created. He
you know,
created.
well, I'm intrigued because it's something that I don't know anything about. Now, it was a question I used to ask my son. My son is an actor, right?
Mm.
And I've been able to be involved with a number of professional athletes, young men that played college football, college basketball, and they come up in situations where their fathers was not available to them, right? And so their moms are doing the very best they could to raise these young men, right? And it was a question, I was still, particularly, and I asked my son, being in the industry, right? Whether it be sports, entertainment, if there was three things, if there was three things in entertainment or in music that, because sometimes we don't know that we have an assignment when we go in a sphere of influence. We just look at it and say, I got a gift. I want to make music. I want to make movies. I want to write. I want to produce. And you just finished talking about, we don't know about that other part of the world, and so when you see that world, because if we have these gifts and the gifts have purpose, so we're supposed to go into a sphere of influence, and we're supposed to rub off on it. We're supposed to impact it. What three things in the music industry, in the entertainment, that you would like to change? Now, I asked my son this question and I got the same response, but it's okay. Because I asked him, I said, what three things in Hollywood would you like to change? What kind of
You asking
impact?
me or
Yeah, I'm
Dave?
asking you, what three things, when
Oh,
you look out there and think about what would make the industry better, what three things would you recommend?
well, I think the first thing for me would be the gatekeepers that gatekeep the industry of entertainment just in general. I think, and just to be completely honest, I think that the gatekeepers are kind of being moved aside with things like YouTube and Spotify and all these outlets that you're able to use nowadays to kind of get your own material out there. And that's getting rid of the gatekeepers mainly because some of those gatekeepers, and we're kind of seeing it now with some of the indictments and things that went on. But they do some things to keep to stay in power that I don't believe is necessarily fair to the greater public, or even good for for the public, because I believe that talent should always take precedent over being in position. The sad truth is we live in a world that if you're in position, you can make a lot of decisions. But like I said, the good thing of nowadays is that you got things like YouTube and Spotify allow somebody who's a nobody, so to speak, because I don't believe anybody's a nobody, but you get a chance to put yourself in a position. You can create your own ecosystem, and
Right.
that's very important. The other two things that I think one is, especially for the industry that I'm in, is the narrative that we're pushing. I believe that I would like to change the narrative of, drugs, sex, money, and killing. Just me personally, I would definitely like to change that narrative so much, because I think that the thing between movies and music is, I believe music is more influential than movies. I think people watch a movie, they go home and go to sleep. But people listen to music and they want to listen to that same song 100 times. I don't know about you, but I've never watched one movie 100 times. I might have watched that movie 4 times at the most, and that might be because my nephew or somebody wants to see it again. But
right.
Music just gets into people's spirits, and the influence that we have as musicians is very powerful. And I think that we kind of need to move the narrative away from certain cultural negativities that exist right now. So that would be my second thing. My third thing, I don't know. It's a great question. I don't necessarily know if I have 3 things. I'm sure Dave could come up with something as that third thing.
Yeah, David, what would be that third thing?
I think third thing.
You see what my wife put down there? Yeah, Lowe's has watched The Bodyguard 100 times. I don't think I did it quite 100 times, but I mean, Whitney Houston was like,
No, we don't. No, don't say it. It's nothing like. I'll start by saying it's nothing like a wife to put you out there like that, right, Lowe's?
Yeah, there. Just threw me under the bus.
There's just nothing like it. Well, first of all, let me just say, I'm gonna answer that third question, but I just want, and I'll talk more about it. It's been a pleasure working with Linx and Lowe's. You've known me since we were kids. Really grew up in the same building areas, and what most people know about me, I say things that I mean. I don't just fluff stuff. Okay. Linx is an extraordinarily talented individual. He really is in a lot of aspects. And this song is just one musical composition that's very, very powerful. Now, more about that in a second. I think to add to what Linx said is that, let me preface it by saying what I'm about to say is not that there aren't people of integrity. Let me be very clear about that. There are people who are people of integrity. I think that people who think artists first, it's all about the artists, it's all about the individuals that created the material, okay? And if you lead with that, and even from the business standpoint, it's very, very important, the business side of it, people who they're out there, they're powerful people, they have means and things of that nature. Don't get me wrong, that's very, very important. But even with that being the case, it all starts with an idea. Movies, everything starts with an idea. Until it's created, this machine really doesn't have any pies to sell. So it comes from the individuals that create things, and Linx is one of those individuals, okay, who have that type of talent, raw talent. So I would say that individuals that they're reminded to add that as a third piece, that it's all about the individuals who create it, and we play our part. I mean, people in the business, I'm just helping here. There are people in the business world that are far more knowledgeable than me, but I think I can recognize something when an individual is special and talented, and I think I can recognize when a composition or musical composition or something that's being created is special. So that's my little role with this thing with Linx. But I would add that to it, and then I would say, and then I want to have you get back with Linx. I'd be more than happy to answer some questions, but I think it's about him and what he's brought into existence. But I will mention the whole Terry Williams situation as you were talking, and I've mentioned Terry Williams to Linx on a number of occasions. She's I'm gonna say is a special person and a high school classmate of mine, and I remember when she was talking about, before the book came into existence, Black pain, it only looks like we're not hurting. I remember we're having lunch and dinner, and she would talk about, and I won't get into those details, even though it's chronicled in the book now, her personal challenges that she was undergoing at that time, and some specificity of those challenges. And so she was remarkable to reduce that to a book. And the title in of itself says it all. Black pain, it only looks like we're not hurting. And she was talking about from a cultural perspective of of African American and people of color have far too often our mantra is man up, man up, man up, be a man, meaning not seeking help or dealing with these issues ourselves, or our dude, you and your dude, or your clique or your crew only dealing with it. And also then we have that other part of it that you pray about it. Just take it to the Lord. And I'm certainly not disparaging that, and I'm a man of faith. I'm certainly not doing that. But we have a tendency, well, just pray about it, baby. Just it's gonna be all right. But we need, in addition to that, do the prayer, because the word says those who are believers on this, faith without works is dead. Okay, so we have to seek individuals who have the expertise, right, to assist in this situation. More about it, but I think the whole simplicity of this masterpiece that Linx created through pain. And one of the things in the EPK says he picked up a pen to ease the pain. He didn't pick up a bottle. He didn't pick up a drug, which I'm not castigating or disparaging individuals who do that. That's one of the problems that's associated when you're depressed, and you turn to other sources and things that you put into your body. He picked up a pen.
Yeah.
Okay. And out of his heart came a music composition that can affect so many people. So I just want to talk about Terry. Love her dearly. A genius in the PR field, well known and respected, and wish her well with her own, trials and tribulations. You mentioned early on prevention. There's the cliche that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. See, we know all the cliches. A lot of us know all the scripture, but it's the application and the doing of it. Okay.
Right.
It's the application and the doing of it. Linx did something. Okay. Yeah. With this song, and I think it can be even more impactful. There's so much more that's in me as a result of this song, but I'm trying to be mindful of what it's about and who it's about.
Right.
Okay? I'd be more than happy to answer some additional questions. But it is a powerful medium, an extremely powerful medium of music. I will say this very, very quickly. A thing that I say so often, the film, speaking of films and movies, right? One Night in Miami. Linx heard me say this. I've said it to other people. The film One Night in Miami. Okay. The characters in that film is Cassius Clay. They were friends, a crew. I didn't even know that, but Cassius Clay, he was then Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, Malcolm X, and Sam Cooke. That was a crew. And this poignant scene inside of the film, right, where Malcolm X starts to scold, if you will, Sam Cooke, right? You making all these pretty songs and these love songs, and you kind of teasing him these dance songs, and then he played the Bob Dylan song "Blowing in the Wind." How many roads must a man walk before they call him a man? And very powerful lyrics, right? And then when you listen to Regina King, the director of that film, not David Words, Regina King, the director of the film, she says it was purposefully done, that it was a very powerful scene. And what Malcolm X was saying, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Cassius Clay in the hotel room, and Malcolm X says, you should make a song like that when he played Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan. Why aren't you making songs like that? A song like Blowing in the Wind that was almost the anthem for the civil rights movement and Vietnam War situation going on. And what Regina King said is what she was saying, what Malcolm X was saying in that scene was all about was this. Nobody in this room of those names, again, is more powerful than you, Sam. Has a bigger voice than you, Sam Cooke. That's a powerful statement. when you got those type of people in the room, I will stop right there, but it stays with me because the power of music, as Linx already said, is absolutely incredible. People hum songs, it gets in the subliminal, it's in our subconscious. It motivates us, it moves us. We cry, we laugh, we think about our girlfriends, wives, ex-wives. Some songs come on, that invokes emotion. It'll turn that off, you know. But an emotion it invokes, and there's a reason for that. I'm not a music psychiatrist or psychologist, but I guarantee. But there has been research been done with studies on the brain, where they study the brain and how it affects the brain in the human body. That's why this musical compositional movement, as I call it, and we call it, that Linx came out of his pain, is so powerful.
So yeah, and you know, and again, none of us are expert at this, but I got a friend of mine who helped me out with the blueprint back when I first started. He's the expert here. I'm going to bring him on for a few minutes to talk a little bit about you know, this subject that we dealing with, and Steve Vaccaro, Linx, David, Steve, David, of course, we both grew up at the Boys Club of Mount Vernon, now Boys and Girls Club of Mount Vernon. And Steve is now, he you know, does a lot of, you know, in regards to, you know, the chapters rap radio, you know, networking, all those kinds of things. But he's also working with the Boys and Girls Club of Mount Vernon in the area of mental health.
Yes.
So, so Steve, you know, I don't know how long you've been on. I don't even know if you got a chance to hear Linx composition.
Yeah, yes. First of all, I must say, Lowe's, you're doing an amazing job with your show. You week after week, amazing guests, and you're really an advocate and bring on other people that are making a difference in this world, that have made a difference in this world and continue to do so. So it's, you know, a pleasure to be here tonight. I also must say that I saw The Bodyguard 95 times, so I'm right behind you. But you talk about music, and you know, Whitney Houston, I mean, she really brought people that spirit, her song, her music, her personality, her angelic voice brought people together. And I think what everybody's talking about, as a psychologist and mental health therapist, it's important to me to look at these staggering numbers, because the suicide rate is high amongst all people, and our young people as well. I mean, this year alone, 2020, there was 45,900 suicides. 45,900 suicides. In the ages between 10 and 14, it's the third leading death in 2020 amongst young people, the third leading death. And that's before the pandemic. These numbers are higher. That means nearly 2 times as many suicides, over 45,000, that there were homicides in 2020 in the United States. So those are staggering statistics that we really need to look at. What's affecting our youth, the breakdown of the family unit, the division of society, the polarization of things that are going on around us, the confusion or the conflict that we look at as a society with what we're all faced with day to day. We can't lose sight of our young people. And in those numbers, what's also staggering, kids that are in detention center or incarcerated, 1 of 6 of those children, those young people, are suicidal. 1 in 6. So I have not heard the whole show, but because this month is very important to get the word out, I think I'm trying to get the word out in different platforms. So I thank you, Lowe's, for bringing me on tonight.
Yeah. And I thank you for coming on too and sharing. I mean, because, you know, as you know, young people just coming out in the Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs and going into school. Now they're back in school, right? They're back in school, just starting back to school. And one of the things when I was a executive director of the Boys and Girls Club, Mr. Jones, he used to always remind me, right? And when a kid came into the club and they were acting out, they're going crazy. You come from school just going crazy, right? And I'm like, and then every day, right? You got kids that come in every day the same way. So I was at the point like, yo, I'm about to kick them out. Right. And then Mr. Jones would remind me, he said, hey, man, you don't know what that kid is going through. Do you know whether or not that kid ate today? I mean, was there some trauma going on in their home? Is the kid being bullied? You just don't know. And he said, you have to learn how to exhaust kids. Right. You have to learn how to spend time with them and build relationship with them. And you have to exhaust your experience, not a 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out. Right. Because you never know what a kid is going through. So having you at the Boys and Girls Club, or having what we had before at NCADD, having these particular prevention situations are so powerful. And then having Linx, right? Having him, and it's almost like David and I was talking about, the impact of the song "We Are the World." Right. And then I think Linx would say, yeah, I have this song. And then you would probably say, and all of us would probably say, okay, here's got to be a practical application to the, what's next, and I think he's thought about that. And, I wanted you to just kind of share a little bit, and before we continue with the conversation on what's next with it.
Yeah, I think also, Lowe's, you bring up a good point, because being a newbie at the Boys and Girls Club in Mount Vernon, there are children that are coming into my office that you don't know their backgrounds until they sit down with you. But they're exhibiting behaviors like pushing or bullying or stealing or doing all kinds of things. But when they come in the office, they all have a dramatic or traumatic situation that are going on at home. I mean, when you sit down and you listen to some of the stories that are occurring, you have to do what you just said. You have to spend that time. And I commend the people in Mount Vernon at the Boys and Girls Club, but also nationally, because more attention has to be put on the young people, because they are victims in so many ways. And now with the migrant situation, there's more challenging situations for young people that we have to do as adults and as family people, as children of God, but also people that are working in the community, to kind of really look at these red flags that are occurring and take note of it, because not every family has the means for proper health insurance. I mean, if they're going to choose, if they have $100 and they have to buy food or a copay for a therapy session, guess what? They're probably going to choose food. And where does that go time after time? And it's something that we need to address quicker. And the gentleman that you have on tonight are making a difference. And you continue to do the work that you do is making a difference as well.
So, yeah. Well, Steve, thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on, man. And I'm looking forward to, I think Teresa and I are looking forward to your upcoming gala.
Yes. The gala is October 7th. But I want to say there's some warning signs that we have to pay attention to.
Yes, sir.
If a young person is talking about dying or changing in personality, changing behavior, changing sleep patterns, changing eating habits, fear of losing control, take note of that. Make sure you talk with that young person or bring them to a proper authority, a counselor or an adult, to kind of work through that. So there are red flags that are out there. We just have to make sure we see those red flags and to help our young people. And thank you. Yes, the gala is October 7th. It's 10 years since I've been doing my nonprofit work, and we're celebrating on October 7th with a whole bunch of community awards. We have a lot of youth heroes that we're acknowledging. And for more information, I guess they could contact you, Lowe's, to find out more about it. But thank you for having me on tonight.
All right. And thank you for taking time out your busy schedule.
All right. God bless, guys.
God bless you, man. Yeah. And let me say this before we continue. I mentioned earlier the NCADD, right? And I'll just tell you one situation that happened. And someone at some point I want to bring my wife in because she deals with a lot of this as well. But one of the young ladies was excellent with the elementary school and just having everyday a couple of times a week she was meeting with the kids, elementary school, just having conversations with them. When she noticed that there was one kid, right, that kept saying, every night I see myself jumping off a building. And so, it was so consistent that eventually when you hear these things, you got to call people in. So of course we end up, calling the Boys and Girls Club staff, alerting the parents, and then having a deeper conversation with the parents about what their child was thinking about. Right. Which eventually, again, turned into a therapy situation to help the child move forward. I think this is maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. So now this young lady, this young person is, is now in high school now. So doing very well. But, those were flags, so, so Linx, what do you see like between you and David? Like, cause I think I sent my wife some stuff. Everybody's dealing with this. Government and every sphere of influence, the church, and it's the weirdest thing is that, the NBA is doing it. Has been doing it for a while around all the G League, WNBA, become so much aware of this, and this is where I think this composition, right? And there's a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, information there. So talk about next steps for the composition. Where do you see it going, and its impact?
I'm definitely gonna let Dave tackle that one because he's my business mind. He's the one that honestly has had the passion for this record to move it from point A to point B and point C and all the way to Z. So I'll definitely let him tackle that one.
Well, I think that, thank you for punting that, but it's a collaborative effort. I'm harking back to what I said a few moments ago and being mindful of what Linx thinks, okay, about the direction. Some of the things we've talked about, obviously, is without getting into details because time won't permit, and also there's some conversations, probably embryonic stages, if you will, maybe toddler stage with some entities about things which obviously when you start to talk with people, it's not appropriate to talk in details when you're talking with someone about something. So respecting the status of it at this point in time. I've spoken with a national mental health entity, nonprofit that has statewide branches, and spoken with one of the directors who is impressed and it resonates with him as well. Obviously, when you talk with entities, Lowe's, then they have to talk with people. You serve on that board, the alcohol drug, and they got people on committees, they got subcommittees, they got all these people that you have to talk to as it makes its way up through the channels. Met with a university in North Carolina, and they talked about the possibility of using it on their on-campus mental health campaign, and had mentioned that I think last year a young lady took her life on campus. And so they talked about different ways of the possibility of utilizing it. So I think governmental entities, both on the local and the federal level, as we make contact with those and have opportunities to present this to them, is a viable source and channel, if you will, for this musical composition to make its mark and to be effective. I think also from an organic grassroots perspective, talking with individuals in the whole social media arena and utilizing it there to begin to make an impact and a statement as well. And also, as I said before, universities and governmental entities as well. I'm sorry, I when you're talking with people, you really can't get into the details of that because you're trying to make some things happen, if you will, and work in those arenas. So, but I think we're open to individuals and entities in various spheres that understand how useful and how impactful music is in any particular cause. And this particular musical composition, what we're talking about on this forum and what Steve was talking about a few moments ago, it crosses all sectors. I mean, it's everywhere. It's genderless, all ethnicities, cultures, races, age, everywhere, every sectors. And then you have, not to politicize or get into politics, but then you have when you have mass shootings or some heinous criminal act that occurs, from a political perspective, not us on this call, subscribe it to mental health. I'm not going to get into NRA and gun rights and things of that nature, and Second Amendment and things of that nature, but they quickly subscribe it to that. But on the other hand, you have individuals who have mental health issues where sometimes family members call, the authorities to come assist them, and those individuals are taken down and taken out. Okay, and so that's where this song is so important and impactful as well. Is are you okay? And it can be asked from the sphere, if you will, of corporate entities down to the grassroots level as well. My wife, you're speaking of your wife and the great work she does. My wife assisted and spearheaded, not by herself because, no man's island, the team, but she spearheaded something called the Mental Health Court here in Columbia, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. She helped bring it to Columbia, South Carolina, the Mental Health Court. Okay, so you talk about the spheres, the judicial system and social workers, it's all converging to try to deal with individuals that she can tell the story better than me because she helped bring it here. But she helped bring an entity here that deals with, from a legal perspective, and crimes committed, certain types of crimes, we're going to deal with these individuals through this particular court system, not this court system, because we recognize that they have some mental health issues. So it's being attacked from all sectors. Okay. And so I think that we are still developing as far as the channels and the spheres that we can, this particular musical composition could be put through, but we've had some opportunities to speak with some folk who have been receptive to it. And we're still looking for other opportunities though. Linx, please.
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, that is definitely where we're going. Definitely looking for different entities to give the song more visibility, because our end game is to help as many people as possible. So that's, I think big organizations that have the biggest reach would be great in the long haul. But right now, we're definitely looking for anybody who believes the record can be put on a commercial or anything like that to kind of help them get their message across, or even any directors of movies that have a good positive storyline behind it to kind of bring home the prevention, suicide prevention, or not even kind of a mental health awareness. Anything that has to do with mental health awareness, I think we want to attach this record to those entities as well that would like to bring more mental health awareness to individuals who might not be thinking about that. I think one thing that you said earlier, Lowe's, was it kind of gave me a light to was noticing those signs and signals of someone in desperation who is thinking about taking their life. I think that's very important, and kind of bringing awareness to some of those signals, some of those things that might be red flags, so to speak, to say, hey, this person needs help. And then kind of also alerting people as to the numbers and because a lot of times, we're living our life and we're thinking, oh, this can't happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at those numbers that the psychologist who was just on kind of gave you those numbers, you're like, oh, so it's literally could be the person standing next to me at any time. You just don't know. And a lot of times what I've found with people who I know who were living their lives next to me and then they took their lives, I had no idea. They were the most peaceful people. Man. And they're just going through something personally or within their own sphere that they think, and I don't believe it's true, but I think they think in their own mental capacity that they don't have an out. So I think we as a unit, we got to come together and let people know that they do have an out. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and there is somebody who will reach out and help you get from point A to point B in your life, so you don't have to go through this alone.
Yeah. I was thinking that one of to answer your question number 3.
Answer your question. You're the one that...
So I offer this suggestion is that you talk about genres. You're talking about rock, R&B, rap, gospel. Then maybe there's a category, right, of people that could, in this type of in with your song, could create a category of music, since music is so powerful.
No, absolutely.
You creating a category of those types of songs around many of the not I would say tragedy, but issues. That people are writing. Who's writing songs? Like at the end of the movie, I mentioned the movie Butter, right? At the end of the movie, there was a song, right? And I listened to the song intently, like wow, what? You could see in the song they used it for the movie, right? But is there, could it be a category where people can click on when I'm struggling, stressed, I don't know what to think? It could be a category of I'm just saying that's what I would change it. Could be a category of where people can go and click on, when my mind is like not, you know what I'm saying? Because, sometimes, if I want to slow down something like that, sometimes, opera, listen to classical music with no words, just listening to the instrumental part of it, for me, that calms me down.
It's my favorite genre, by the way.
Which one? The classical?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something about it when you listen to the instrumental part of it, right? But there should be a category. Oh, prevention, and the music that goes with it. I mean, that would be my suggestion. I mean,
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a very powerful genre.
Yeah. And I mean, this is interactive. Anybody out there has a question, but I want to bring on my wife real quick because she's in the whole addiction field. And maybe she has some questions or comments. Maybe she'll jump on, come from behind the scenes. I don't know where she at, but there she goes. And she got a book there too as well. So what? And deals with a lot of things that she had been going through or experiencing in her life. You got any comments or questions, man? Yeah, you're mute. You got to unmute.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Linx for your transparency. I think it's important for us to be transparent in order for us to heal. A lot of people, and what I love about Terry Williams is one of my favorite. I've given her books to many people. her book to many people. But a lot of times when we're in professions that we have to look good, we have to put on the best front. We have to show everybody, that we got it all together when inside we're really falling apart. We have to have a safe space that we can fall apart. Got to navigate so we can find safe places, safe friends, safe people we can talk to. Um, Excuse me, sometimes when I'm working, and going through, I'll tell somebody, this is Vegas, right? What goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? And so when I find my people, I go to Vegas and I go to a place where I can be transparent. But, as I've shared in the story last time, when I was a young kid, I contemplated suicide a few times. And it was really, um, when I think about being here today, I'm just so thankful and grateful to God that I didn't choose that path, but it was an easy way for me to kind of get rid of the trauma that I was experiencing at the time. And when you talked about the music being an outlet, and that classical is good music, and whether they could choose a particular genre to help people with it, some people's trauma is centered around a particular music. So some people might have trauma around classical music. So, people have to find what works for them. And so that goes back to my point about being eclectic, right? What works for Linx may not work for Patrice. What works for Lowe's may not work for David, and vice versa. So we have to really research and find out what actually works for us to help us through these places. And so, you know, now that we've been through it, one of Terry Williams' favorite lines that I've used over and over again, she said, if I bore a hole through the path of success and I get there before you, I'm obligated to reach my hand back and pull you through. So when you've come through a place of depression, you've come through a place of, suicide, and you're right there, sometimes look back and help somebody else helps you to stay where you need to be. So, that's what I'm always about, really doing what I can to help others. I'm in this field every day. And some of the highest rated suicide numbers are in psychiatrists, right? The people that help people are the people that have a higher rate, because what happens is you become a garbage can of everybody's trauma, and eventually their trauma traumatizes you, which is vicarious traumatization. And so if you don't, even as a healthcare provider, find a place to help you when you're doing this work, you can find yourself, and this is pastors have high rates of suicide, a lot more. You'd be surprised about the suicide rate in pastors, because also people come to them with their problems. So we can't be receptacles to problems and not have a place of an outlet for our own. Because what happens when people come to you with their problems, why do you think they come to you? They come to you because they think you have answers. They come to you because they think you can help them, right? And that may be all well and good, but sometimes you're the one that actually needs the help. Right? So I would always say, if you're in the field to help somebody, find somebody to help you as you help somebody else. And I don't care whether that's through pastoralship, or whether it's in counseling or whatever. I think that's really necessary to help. And I'll just say this last thing: the pandemic definitely caused greater increases in numbers, because insulation and isolation really caused kind of like an internal fire that caused a lot of people to really struggle. And we were not only were we not able prepared to deal with the medical complications of the COVID, we definitely were not ready or prepared to deal with the psychological addictive impact that COVID would have on our communities. So there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And some of the suicide that you're experiencing may be accidental overdoses or purposeful overdoses, and they're not necessarily being called suicide because they're all overdoses. So we just need to be really mindful of all of those things, because it does impact us in the field, and I know I see it every day in my job. So thank you.
I was going to just take it back quickly. What Tracy said, just now about organizations within the South Carolina bar. I'm sure other states as well, but within the South Carolina bar, we have a lawyers helping lawyers. We have we have a section of the South Carolina bar, lawyers helping lawyers, because of the suicide, the depression, the alcohol, the drugs. So we have a whole separate committee or section that deals with that. Exactly what Tracy was saying. And then the point, another point that she made about our dear friend Terry Williams, we talk about boring a hole and reaching back. I think it's in one of her, maybe her first book, called Terry Williams, The Personal Touch book, right? And she talks about, she told me this person, she said, David, you know, as we know, we all know, knowing Terry, she was a social worker by trade, and then she wanted to be a public, okay? And then Miles Davis, Eddie Murphy, and it was on. And so when she was talking to me, she says, David, you know, I was knocking on doors. I was calling people. They wasn't calling me back. They wasn't returning my phone. They, you know, as we say here in the South, they wasn't studying me, the old country saying, right? Totally ignoring her, which is more than ignoring when you ain't studying nobody, right? Okay. And then she said, okay, all of a sudden she's taken off because of Eddie Murphy and Miles and that type of stuff. And all of a sudden phone calls, meetings. And Tracy, I'm sure, and Lowe's, you all know this. And then she said, David, she says, they want to meet with me. And I was sitting with them, and I'll never forget, she says, and they started, oh, you're so great. We need you for this. We need you for that. And she said, I called you on such and such a date. I tried to reach you on this such a date. I came by to try to meet with you. She gave them all the history of her attempts to try to reach them, and they ignored her. And then she said this, she said, and I said to them, how can I help you?
Right.
That's Terry, right?
Yeah.
And I actually had her personal touch book as well. And it really, one of the things that she talked about was the importance of looking in people's faces and saying their names. Right. And a lot of times people will, you know, you'll talk to somebody and you don't remember who they are because you haven't said their name enough. So in her conversation, she would say, you know, she would like say Linx and I were talking. She would say Linx's name about 3, 4, 5 times. So she would remember your name. And that's what a person who's a publicist is. But she had all that information in her mind. And there were so many things that were going on in that mind of hers. And so, you know, I do appreciate Terry. We developed a relationship. Both of us are social workers. My mom is a social worker, my sister. So we had a very deep connection. And am much younger than she is, but I looked up to her tremendously for the work that she did and for the writings that she had. But I would say also, what is your outlet? If you're a person that is struggling, is there something? For me, it was sports. So when I really got to the place of being traumatized, I could go out, I would run, or I would play basketball. You know, now I write. You know, so writing is therapeutic for me. You know, Linx does music. You know, he's putting that together in shows. And if you can find your outlet, it would be really important to help you deal with your emotions. But we also have to look at, how do we define success? So when I think about the fact that remember Chico and the Man? Many those of us who can show their age, right? But he committed suicide, right? And there's a lot of these, and we used to think like he was a comedian, like he'd be on the show and he would be really funny, and then next thing you know, like he committed suicide, and you're like, what did he look so happy? You know, I think Robin Williams, you know, there were some actors out there that were doing some things, and you just thought like, wow, they just looked like they had it all together, and something is missing. Something happened to them, and whether it be the addiction or whether it be the suicide. You know, Michael Jackson, you know, he had everything together, but you know, something happened. You know, Prince, something happened. You know, so how do we prevent these people who are in music and in acting and in sports and
In
entertainment
life.
from going down this path, and they have to talk to somebody that they feel safe with, because not all of their business is safe. Somebody wants to make a movie off of their life. Somebody wants to take their information, and they have to be able to be safe to talk to somebody, and that person that they talk to has to be safe enough to tell them when they're wrong. There are a lot of people out there that are in the entourages of these folks that are entertainers that won't tell them that they're wrong because they're afraid they'll lose their connection or their money or whatever. But you've got to be able to tell that person you're wrong.
And the lyrics in the song, it talks about Linx wrote is that the scars are on my face. In other words, you're saying one thing, but your face says something else.
Right.
When you
And
listen to the lyrics of the song.
right. And I think that most of the time, man, we have selective hearing. So, we're not really paying attention to people because our main objective is to make ourselves feel good, and make ourselves sound good. So, it's us first. And sometimes people are talking to you, we're not really listening. Like, hey man, you see somebody in the street, you're like, hey man, what's up? Yeah. Oh man, I've been going through, and you're not listening. Oh yeah, man, yeah, And then in the church world, I mean, oh, I'll pray for you, and then you're gone, but you never pray for the individual. So, and then you never go back to find out whether or not the individual was actually solved the situation was solved. So I think you have to be aware to listen to people today intently, and listen to people with purpose.
Mm-hmm. And Lowe's, it's interesting. Go ahead, Lowe's. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I just want to show just two things before we get off here is that I put down some what I call suicide prevention spiritual tools, right? And I'm going to flip through these things real quick, Trees. I think at number one, like, hey, we know this scripturally. It says the thief does not come except to steal and kill and destroy, but I come that you might have life. And for me today is that, life is important, for me today, and that you may have it more abundantly. Life and abundant life is so important to me today, and so sometimes it doesn't, and then overcoming, sin consciousness, because even when we think that we've been forgiven, right, we've never really been forgiven. We still have guilt and resentment and depression and anxiety because we've never really gotten free of, our conscience is not free. We still think we're still in sin, right? And then, I think the next one, it talks about living in this life of what I consider this life of death and anxiety and all these different things of the works of the flesh. We live in ambition and all envy. And then we go over into righteous consciousness where we realize, hey, man, all has been forgiven, man, and that Jesus is taking on all this for us. And now we're in righteous consciousness, right? So we're taking spiritual tools of prevention. And then it says there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Right. So when you talk about most of us living a fearful life, we live in a life where we think about death and dying. Right. We think about negative things all the time. We don't really know what love is. Right. But, we talking about these fruits of the spirit. Right there that we see love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and mercy. We must manifest those things. We can't talk about those things. We can't talk. Love, these are the attributes of love. So we got to have joy in our life and we got to have peace in our life and we got to help to bring peace in our life, and then it says here that Jesus, who is perfect love, has turned into a blameless, holy, righteous saints. It says, therefore, is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear because fear has to do with punishment, right? The one who is feared is not made in perfect in love. So it comes down to, man, I think a lot of people just really want to be loved. They want to be paid attention to, right? And, and what we talked about tonight is sometimes, man, it's a psychological thing. It's in our soul, it's in our mind, our consciousness, right? And then it's in our physical body and what's happening in our body. Right. And we may be consciously led by one or the other, but I think the success comes when we're led by what is spirit. Right. Is that if we allow genuinely the spirit, and I'm not talking about just preaching it. Right. I'm talking about manifesting it, so these are my, my tools, spiritual tools for success is how do we get to a spiritual lifestyle? One that is really the remnant to it. Is that most people you find out really want to be loved. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I mean, I've heard many people that join gangs, right? Because the gang offer them like you in a family, right? And they hug you and they do all the different things and bring you in and then get you to do something negative, man, to hold it over you, right? But they all the time was looking for just somebody to love them, just care about, listen to them, right? And I think we all want genuine love. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree, but we all want somebody to love us, man. I mean, we want to be loved.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And people, even when they greet sometimes, yo, show me love. And it's not really just a cliche, actually.
Yeah. What Linx, what's your thought before we get off here?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think actually we'll go back to something your wife said as well, having somebody to lean on and to be safe with. And shout out to David Belton for being my person for over 10 years as a person who I've been able to lean on and be honest with, because the music industry is that type of industry where you do have to put on your best face. And, you know, I do got to wear all my chains, and I do got to drive an exotic car, and I do got to do all these things so that I can progress further, because in our industry, people don't want to deal with you unless you're at a certain status. So like I said, Dave has definitely been that person for me to kind of offload as well. But back to what you were saying earlier, that is, you know, I might know a little bit about gang culture, and that is what it is. You are you feel like you have a family, like you are a part of a family, and show, like you said, you show love to your family, and that's the homies show me love. You know, that's a saying in that culture, and it is very much the negative thing that's held over your head is it's kind of like family as well, though, because, you know, every family member knows about something you did that you shouldn't have did, whether you were a youngster or an adult, that they hang over your head as well. You know, my sister to this day hangs a couple things over my head, and we laugh about it. But you know, it's kind of the same thing in gang coach as well. It's just like, hey, remember when we did such and such and so forth. And the Italians have a thing called Cosa Nostra. It's this thing of ours, and that is something that you and your cohort have done together in this thing of ours, and they hold that over your head. But it's still very much a family environment, because everybody does want to be loved. And I think if we as a community can come together and just be that for each other, without the, hey, we're going to hang this over your head because that makes us family. No, we're family because we're family. We're family because I love you. You know, we're family because I care about you. If, you know, we can come together and just do that, you know, unconditionally, then I think we've just got a much better chance of survival, and less, you know, when I looked at that number, 132 per day, people taking their own lives, it just hurt me, man. So, you know, we definitely want to do everything we can to change that.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to thank, thank my wife. I want to thank Linx. I want to thank you and thank David, man, for, you know, I'm all in, man. I think what you guys are doing is amazing. Keep up the great work, man. It was my pleasure to meet you, Link.
You too, Lowe's.
Yeah, and you know, I'm sure, you know, we'll stay connected, man. And again, thanking.
We're gonna arrange a meeting. We're gonna physically meet, Lowe's.
Okay.
We need to physically meet, because I understand. I know we need to wrap this up. I understand Zoom. I get it. I understand electronics, but I'm an old school kind of guy. It's nothing like being in the same room with a person and feeling their energy and interacting with them. And I think that you're gonna feel and see even more when you get an opportunity to meet Linx. And I'll talk with you, and the three of us will talk again. This is not by accident or coincidence. I've been talking about him. Lowe's, thank you very, very much for giving Linx an opportunity to be in this forum. I think it's just the beginning. And Tracy as well, please. And we'll get together, break bread together, and talk about some things, okay?
Linx, thank you, man. David, thank you, man. I appreciate you guys, man. And look forward to sitting down with you.
Okay.
And
definitely.
Yeah, awesome, man. But Linx, thanks again, man. Awesome, man.
Thank you.
And want to thank each and every one of you that watch the Blueprint each week. Man, I really appreciate your support. Man, I want to say I look forward to seeing you next week. I want to say every week I say if God allows you to wake up tomorrow, make tomorrow your masterpiece. God bless you. Love you. See you next week. Y'all hang out for a moment.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Lowe's More, the Blueprint Podcast. Stay connected and follow us at our website, www.lowesmore.com. That's LOWESMOORE.com. You can also join the discussion on Twitter at Lowe's More and on Facebook at Lowe's More Jr. As always, thank you for pushing your mindset towards a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking portion of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast to stay fully up to date with everything we're up to. Until next time, be kind to yourself and each other.
What they teaching is a joke. I ain't buying it like I'm broke. Insufficient funds for insignificant.